Hi everybody, this is Saad for the Sad Truth. This past Friday, Chrystia Freeland, the new Minister of International Trade of the Trudeau government, appeared on Real Time with Bill Maher. She exhibited every single possible talking point of the regressive left, or as I prefer to call them, the Ostrich Brigade. She went full Affleck on Mr. Maher. She was simply unable and or unwilling to navigate within the realities of the real world. I went back and listened to the clip and jotted down her key talking points, to which I'll offer a rebuttal to each shortly. Unless we are able to defeat this ostrich logic, free, secular, and liberal societies will ultimately be irrevocably damaged. So let's take each of her points in turn. At one point, she intimated that all religions and cultures are equal. So here we go. Nothing could be further from the truth. People who come to Canada and who stem from different religions and cultural backgrounds are equal under the law. So in that sense, we're all equal. This does not mean that their cultures and religions are all equally good or equally bad. Let's take an analogy. There are countless forms of cuisine. It would be silly to argue that all cuisines are equally spicy. Similarly, when it comes to cultural and religious values, they are profoundly dissimilar. If you are an animal, pray that you live in a country ruled by Jains. The reason being that Jains have all sorts of very elaborate procedures to ensure that they don't harm any living being. If you are a cow, you might prefer to live among Hindus. If you are a gay man, you might wish to avoid some of the countries where they adhere to Sharia law. Religious beliefs have real-world consequences, and they are not interchangeable, nor are they equal in their capacity to inflict misery. Let's go on to her second point. Every faith has bad people. My rebuttal: this is an extraordinarily vacuous statement. No one questions the fact that there are nice Jews and mean Jews, nice Christians and mean Christians, nice Hindus and mean Hindus. However, we are discussing ideas that stem from religious traditions. This is fully decoupled from the fact that adherents of any religion will follow a normal distribution along many relevant traits. Moving on to the next canard that she proposed, the diversity argument. Mrs. Freeland reaffirmed the fact that Canada values diversity and that diversity is part of our richness. Well, I fully agree with Ms. Freeland. However, we have very different notions of diversity. Gastronomical, folkloric, racial, ethnic, national, and linguistic diversity enrich a society. However, no diversity should be allowed when it comes to adhering fully, unconditionally, and unequivocally to our secular and liberal values and laws. We are not enriched by a diversity of beliefs regarding whether gays should be killed or not. We are not enriched by a diversity of beliefs regarding whether women should have the right to their clitorises. We are not enriched by a diversity of beliefs regarding whether Jews and other religious minorities have a right to exist. These beliefs do not exist in the deep recesses of Bill Maher's mind. They exist in the real world, and they have harmed the lives of hundreds of millions of people for many centuries. The problem with Ms. Freeland, and more importantly her boss, Prime Minister Trudeau, is that they are firm believers in capital M multiculturalism. However, there is a difference between small m multiculturalism as a term being synonymous with plurality, which is a good thing, and multiculturalism with a capital M as a political philosophy. The latter ideology, mainly the political philosophy of multiculturalism, was instituted by the current Prime Minister's father, Pierre Trudeau, and it is frankly an affront to human decency. It rejects the idea that a host country should expect its immigrants to assimilate into its values and traditions. Rather, using the tenets of moral and cultural relativism, it permits all individuals to import their cultural and religious values irrespective of how nefarious some of these might be. Numerous European leaders have now realized that multiculturalism as a political philosophy has failed. It's tragic that Canada is repeating the same mistake and has not learned from our European compatriots. Moving on to the next statement from Ms. Freeland. She basically argued that by criticizing Islam, you were demonizing a religion and demonizing all Muslims, every single one of them, 1.6 billion of them. So my rebuttal, if truly we are a free society, then we have every right to criticize, mock, ridicule, question, debate, and unequivocally reject any religion. To argue that we are demonizing a religion if we reject its tenets implies that there is no such thing as free speech. Nothing could be more illiberal. It is quite ironic that the so-called Liberal Party supports values that are perfectly illiberal. Bill Maher has repeatedly stated that he is criticizing Islam and not individual Muslims. He has also stated that while many Muslims adhere to the violent texts within their religious tradition, example jihadists, many others choose to ignore these same problematic passages. Countless Muslims are peaceful, kind, and gentle souls, but this says nothing about whether it is fair game to criticize their religion. Finally, to imply that criticizing Islam is racist, bigoted, or hateful is equivalent to stating that disliking broccoli is homophobic. I recently did a Sad truth clip on exactly that point. Both statements are nonsensical. Hating ideas, especially religious ideas, is exactly where free speech lives. Perhaps this next example will allow Ms. Freeland to appreciate the difference between attacking people versus attacking ideas to which they might subscribe. So, case one, if someone were to say Jews are inherently evil, that's grotesque anti-Semitism. You're attacking Jews as a people, and that, of course, as a just society, we might reject. Versus, ideas X, Y, and Z in Judaism are nonsensical, idiotic, and evil. Well, that's perfectly fine. So stating that Jews are inherently evil is wrong. Stating that some ideas in Judaism are nonsensical and bad is perfectly fair game. It's not rocket science to tell the two cases apart. Ms. Freeland should support case 2 and reject case 1. On a related note, Ms. Freeland repeatedly stated that she rejects the notion that Islamic ideas could be bad. She was shocked that Bill Maher would intimate such a position. To which I reply, it is breathtaking that the Minister of International Trade views it out of bounds to criticize specific ideas within Islam. If this is true, then not only is she complicit in the suffering of hundreds of millions of Muslims who are shackled by such ideas, but also it suggests that she has never opened up one of the holy books in question. Does she think that the stoning of female adulterers is a good idea? Does she think that the niqab liberates women? Does she think that throwing gays from the top of buildings is a good idea? Of course, not all Muslims adhere to these ideas, but many do. Should we criticize those ideas or accept them as part of our rich diversity? Most Muslims could be perfectly wonderful people, and they are, and this in no way contradicts the fact that Islamic tenets are within the purview of criticism, as are any other tenets of any other ideology. I think I've got two more of her statements to go through, so bear with me. At one point, this is one of the classic canards. This is when you go ostrich on steroids. She referred to the Bible, right? But I mean, the Bible too, Bill, has some ugly parts. So so my rebuttal, in a classic platitude from the Ostrich Brigade, Ms. Freeland used the "but the Bible has bad passages" argument. There are numerous logical errors in this statement. First, there are no countries today that abide by the dictums from Deuteronomy. There are 57 countries that belong to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, many of which take their religious edicts very seriously. Second, the contents of the Bible say nothing about whether or not some Islamic tenets are compatible with secular liberal values. Mrs. Freeland's logic is akin to stating, well, let's not arrest Jeffrey Dahmer because, Ted Bundy. Very few Jews and Christians abide by any of the problematic tenets of the Bible. Hundreds of millions of Muslims are under the rule of various facets of Sharia law. And then finally, she rejected the importance of opinion polls, such as Pew polls, as being untrustworthy. So when Mr. Maher tried to point to the hundreds of millions of Muslims who exhibit attitudes and beliefs that are deeply incompatible with secular liberal values, as typically collected via perfectly reputable Pew polls, Ms. Freeland dismissed the importance of such polls. This is frankly breathtaking. Surveys are used by many different types of scientists to gauge an endless number of profoundly important issues. However, Mrs. Freeland prefers to, quote, reject such data as untrustworthy, for to accept the ugly truths that are communicated in these data would spell disaster for her childlike and unicorn view of the world. So let me conclude. In conclusion, Canada is founded on an ethos of tolerance, plurality, and secularism. Everyone is welcome for consideration within our shores. But if and only if they accept to abide by every inch of our values, not a single inch should ever be conceded as a means of placating any ideology that is contrary to our shared secular and liberal values. I escaped the Lebanese Civil War, and I'm profoundly grateful that I found refuge in Canada. I was able to maintain my cultural, linguistic, and ethnic heritage, but I left at the door any values that were inconsistent with Canada's secular and liberal values. True liberals stand up and fight for individual rights. True liberals know that identity politics are an affront to classical liberalism. I hope that Mrs. Freeland listens to this clip. It would be my distinct pleasure to host her on my show for a respectful and worthwhile chat. She has an open invitation. Thanks for listening.